Just realized as the live studio audience was cheering and going, I gave you no warnings
Yeah.
whatsoever what was about to happen. So that's my bad. This is the way of the Young Dad podcast. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome into another episode. I'm joined by my friend Patrick, aka a Dadalorian Life, over on Instagram. Patrick, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Jay. Appreciate you having me on. Wouldn't be a Monday morning with a few little odds.
True. It's still not as bad as Paramount Plus timing out. I want to say it timed out for me. Hold on. In the first half, 6 times it timed out and the app just closed and I had to open it back up. During the halftime show, twice. During the halftime show. And then it would lag and it was rough. And so Paramount Plus, I tweeted multiple times. I'm like, Paramount Plus, if you could just say you guys weren't ready for this, then just say it. Just admit it now.
Dude, and they had all the time in the world to be ready because they had that one game, that one divisional round for it, and I didn't
No, that
pay
was
for
on
it.
Peacock. That was
Oh,
on
that was on
Peacock.
Peacock. Classic. Should
So
have stuck
Paramount.
with Peacock. Yeah.
But you think they would have taken those numbers, taken
Yeah.
last year's Super Bowl numbers, put an extra 10% on of them to be able to be ready for what could have happened and upgraded their servers in over these
Absolutely.
last, because they've known that they were going to host the Super Bowl for the whole year, right?
Yep.
They've had all this time to get their servers ready, upgraded, their live TV streaming better. They've had all this time, and they failed miserably.
That systems architect is going to be crapping his bed when he goes to work
Already
today.
got fired. He already got fired.
Yeah, absolutely.
He got fired during the first time it went out during the halftime show.
Yeah.
No, because you got to think the artists don't get paid for their halftime performance.
No.
The whole point of the halftime performance is because it's just to give them more publicity, whoever they're with, to give them more publicity for people then to go and filter to their stuff.
Yeah, because I think Usher's releasing an album or something. I think they shared that doing this.
Yeah, but it's and then the audio during the halftime show, I swear it didn't pick them up half the time.
I was watching on YouTube TV. I'm glad it stuck with it. Didn't no blackouts on mine, but
no, I tried watching on Paramount
Plus.
No, it was no. Paramount Plus is great though for as a dad that a millennial dad. All the 90s cartoons, all the good old school cartoons, all the SpongeBob, all the Rugrats, all the Rocket Power, all the Ren and Stimpy, all the Cat Dog, all the things, all those shows that my kids don't watch because they're boring and they're slower than the average cartoon, or the animation's a little bit different. And I just don't like them, which is sad. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, Rocket Power I introduced that, did the whole Wiggly Wiggly with my son. And then it was, can we get moment gone?
Missed opportunity. Maybe a little change someday. But Patrick, tell us about you. Tell us about your platform. Tell us about your fatherhood journey a little bit. Anything else you want us to know about you?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thanks for having me. You had our mutual friend Rob on here, Girl Dad, and that's what got me introduced to you. And I thought you were doing a great job of just bringing in great messages of encouragement from other parents, and also just parenthood, right? And I definitely have taken some things away from myself. But a little bit about me, yeah. So a Dadalorian Life. Let me just start there. The whole name came from one of my favorite shows is The Mandalorian. I'm not a Star Wars nerd or geek, but I do love Star Wars. Grew up on it, being raised by 5 older brothers who were alive during the original trilogies and whatnot. So I was sort of adopted into Star Wars. But The Mandalorian was a show that came out a few years ago, and it was something I really resonated and took to be mine versus my brothers who grew up with the original trilogy. So that's really what it stems from. And it's just a play on that. But a little bit about the show, as we probably all know, there's a way of life for these certain type of people. And there's a reference in the show that's called "This is the way," when they abide by this particular creed or a way of life. And I resonated with that a lot, and that's kind of where it helps me kind of have as a launching point for my platform as being a father. My whole thing is fatherless to fatherhood, a journey, and I really come in with that whole theme, trying to with humor and with some things that are not on my platform, but that's really where it stems from because I've been really enjoying trying to figure out what is fatherhood really looking like for me, and for one who didn't have it, and so that really comes down to three things that out of microcosm from a small thing what I believe should be a big part of not just fatherhood but parenthood in general, is love, availability, and reliability. And the love part comes from first loving my spouse, right? Loving my wife first. And being a product of a single mother, I recognized wholeheartedly like that was something probably missing majority of the time for my mom. She was married twice before I was born, and they were failed marriages. And it was just something that I would hear about as I grew older. And I heard as I saw my siblings become parents and things that they were trying to do and not replicate from their parents, from my mom's ex-husbands, I was like, okay, so that's a big portion of what I believe at the core of fatherhood. First, love my partner, love my wife, let my kids see that love first, and I love them, and then availability. I believe is the best ability that we can give to our children, and also to our spouses, right, to everyone, which I hope leads to the um, output of reliability for our family. And that's, so love availability is the input that we put in together that I hope the output is reliability. And that's what I'm wanting to bring. That's the message of Dadalorian Life. I guess that is the way to what I'm trying to bring. Of course, with a little bit of humor, but, that's kind of the microcosm of what a Dadalorian Life is to me. But I'm the youngest of nine, a little bit more personal. I'm the youngest of nine. So I've had a lot of other parents in my life besides my mom. And, I think I'm trying to create this little platform as even more of a dedication to my little village of those who stepped in the roles as father figures in my life or additional parents when my mom wasn't around, who was working two jobs, sometimes three, to care for me and the rest of my siblings. So that's a big part of who I am.
I like
Yeah.
it. I like it. So, like, out of your siblings within your home that you grew up with, who did
Mhm.
you end up being like closest with? Who are you still like closest with, like out of everyone, like to this day?
Yeah. I mean, well, I take it a step back. There's a 13-year gap between me and the second youngest. So I was everybody's baby. There was already adults in the family of, I just kind of came in and like, oh, surprise. Mom's expecting a child here. So I would say when it comes to closest, it would be my one of my older sibling, my older brother, of course, older. Everyone's older. My brother Mo. He stepped in that father role in our lives for all of us. In uh, man, like not personal connection, but just an easy connection. Him taking that
Mm,
fatherly role to the point that my oldest son is named after him.
very
That's
cool.
how important he is in my life, and I wanted to give that to him. He only has two daughters, who I love, my two nieces, but I was going to have the first boy here, and
Love that. I love that. So, for you, kind of what you hit on there, the first love your wife.
yeah,
That's a topic right there because
yeah,
it's unconventional, which is super sad. I've talked about this in depth on the podcast a few times, where for me personally, and I've been disagreed with on the podcast about this, that it's
mhm,
not as linear as I placed it, but at the same time, it's slightly fluid, but not at the same time. So how I've always rated it, and this goes back to my religious beliefs primarily, is that
mhm,
it's your God first, your
yep,
wife second, your
yep,
kids third, your ministry fourth, and oh no, the rest of your family fourth, and then wait no, ministry fourth, and then everything else after that, kind of thing. So it falls in that very linear, very intentional order.
mhm,
Love God before everyone else, commandment in the Bible, love God first. Everything seems to work out after that. Love your spouse next. And I actually had a conversation with this at work, uh, where it ended up. I was asked very respectfully, like, why is your spouse second or your partner second? Shouldn't your kids be ahead of them? I'm like, no, not necessarily. because if I put my kids before them, then I lose them.
Yep.
Then I lose that support. I lose that system. I lose that help. I lose that. Uh, I lose all of that. I lose that friendship, that support, that reliability, that concrete, foundation, that everything that my partner is, my fiance is. Like I lose all of that. I already went through that once in my previous marriage, and I learned my lesson
Yeah.
when everything else came before my spouse, which happened a lot. And I can admit that full heartedly. I put work and my kid and everything else like before her so much
Hmm.
of the time, and that's okay. I probably there's multiple other reasons why it didn't work out in the end. Not saying that's the end all be all. Did it help? No, but did I learn from that? Absolutely. To now where it's like to now fast forward to today, it's like, well, I'm gonna put her first and respect her and love her, give her a little bit more than my kids because I only have my kids half the time. So what am I supposed to do with the other half of my time? Uh, but also I can still put her first while doing things for my kid. Sometimes, yes, I do have to flip flop those on occasion to where that's just the necessity of the moment to call for, oh, I need to put the kids right here, or, we have to sacrifice this thing that we were going to do for the kids and put the kids ahead of us for this particular thing and kind of move things around. But I think it's important to put your spouse first, your partner first, because they're your support. They're the other parent. If your kids see that you're not loving them, then they're not going to love them or respect them as much. But if they can see how much you love them, then that's going to be a whole lot easier of a
Yeah.
transition there.
Absolutely. I there's two things there, right? Like the first thing I've kind of a light bulb moment for me in this whole creating this platform and thinking about love being the first thing for this. But first, sorry, I agree. Love God first. Yes. Yes to that. And love my wife, right? I believe I agree with you on that end. So, but when it comes to this, I've always said that I loved my wife first, right? But my kids loved us instantly. But I loved my wife first. And I think that was a big thing for me to remember and try to recognize, like, going into this as parenthood and recognize what is important as a father for me in my eyes, right? And going through that. So I just always believed that I loved, like, my kids loved us instantly, but I loved her first. And I try to I joke that with my oldest son who's 5, and he gets it, like, hey, I love you, son, but remember, I loved your mom first. And like it's because he's always about, I did it first, I did this whole, he tries to compete, and so I try to bring that to his attention and teach him and model that, like, I love you, but I loved your mom first, son. And we got to help mama, whatever it is, and then like this and that. But secondly, um, where if I see it falling important is that, it's the whole airline analogy, right? Put your mask on first and before you put anyone else's. And, you know, that was something I took that to heart when I was trying to create this whole idea and this notion. But then lastly, it all actually stems from the fact a year into my wife and I's marriage, I'm not a big astrology guy. Okay. I'm not into the horoscopes, but I think they're interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
But we did a little thing one night. We're like, what is our compatibility to each other? And apparently, me as a Virgo and my wife as a Sagittarius, that is the worst compatibility sign for me. Apparently, there's like a 20% success rate with my wife and I's marriage compatibility. So being the competitor that I am, I was like, oh, let's beat that. Like I kind of took some pride. It's kind of funny, a little weird, but like a little weird take. But but then I recognize why that's incompatible, which only makes me want to work harder because I love her that much. And
That's interesting. Yeah, no, it's horoscopes are something. Um, to any of my single men listening out there, I'm just gonna say this: don't if you're with an astrology girl, run. Um, Run fast, get out, leave. Um, that's interesting that you guys are, so low on the compatibility scale. I'm an Aries, which
Mhm.
doesn't mix well with really anybody. Like Aries, we're kind of the black sheep of all the zodiac. We're loud, we're mean, we're aggressive, we're fiery, we're hot headed, we're short tempered, we're kind of an ass.
Mm.
For me, all those things are true for the most part. I can control it though. I let my Aries out when I need to let it out. Normally it's
Sure.
pretty tame. I keep it kind of like a smoldering fire.
There
Add a
you go.
couple pieces of wood, it'll or some lighter fluid, it'll whoosh. But
Lighter
normally it's just
fluid, tap more
smoldering.
like it.
Exactly. Add a little bit of lighter fluid, those flames will go. But outside of that, like my fiance and I, she's a Pisces and I'm an Aries. And according to Astro Sage, the first thing on Google, it says that this is a picture perfect relationship. So I'll take it. I'll take it. But I mean, it's so important to make sure that you're available. Hit the, loving your wife first, but being available for your children. I've hit this so many times with other guests. Uh, who said it? I think it was Jeff Wickersham, episode 87, I think. Warrior Dad. You guys can look that
Yeah.
up, and if you're listening, go back through the catalog, look for Warrior Dad, Jeff Wickersham. He said that one thing that's really important to him and that's really established his foundation is answering every bid for his attention. So answering all those bids for attention, even the smallest one. Because essentially, I'm sure you've seen it or maybe you haven't, that it's like a viral Facebook post where the kid asks his dad like how much he makes. And then the son asks him, Dad, how much do you make? The dad's like, don't worry about it. It's not important. And he just keeps going like, Dad, how much do you make? How much do you get paid an hour? Finally, the dad cracks and says, I get paid $18 an hour for what I do. Because the dad had a math salary. He's like, I get paid $18 an hour. Little boy goes to his room, gathers up all his allowance, finds $18 of stuff, and he goes to his dad. He's like, Dad, I want to buy an hour of your time. And how important that is because our kids are literally bidding for our attention. They're trying to, especially having multiple children, they're competing for our attention. They're competing with our spouse. They're competing with our own selves. They're competing with themselves sometimes, and they don't even realize it, that they have it, but yet they're still competing for more. And so it's so important to answer all those little bids for attention because we don't want it to get to that point where our kid feels they have to buy our time. They have to buy what we are, who we are, and buy our attention and buy our love, essentially. And it goes back to a lot of what Alan Shedlin and I talked about. I don't even know what episode. He's going to be back on soon. And, we talked about the old adage of how do kids spell love. They spell it Time, time. So it's the old adage there. So it's so important to be available for your children, to be available, to make sure that you can answer those bids for attention no matter when they come.
Agreed. And it's just so interesting that like it's that's trivial to some people that I talk to, and of course we're going to speak to dads, right? Like to some dads, like, well, I got to be the, and sometimes it comes in with just like in Hispanic ways of machismo, like, this is just I'm the man, like I got to be the protector, I got to be the provider, I got to do all these other things, but it's just like I'm not. I've never really put it to be just the time to just play. It's more like any moment is all around. Like there's moments all around you every day, whether that is like playing, giving some time to play or whatnot. But sometimes it's even in the moment of just putting their shoes on, or even just fighting to go to bed. Like those moments, because depending how I react to them is what they're gonna take from it. Because that's unfortunately the moment, right? Fatherhood is crazy. It can be chaos, but my reaction and how I go about it really is going to be the lesson that's going to be taught. Is it pissing dad off? Okay, cool. I'm going to keep doing it because he's probably going to keep doing it because he's getting my attention and it's pissing me off. Or it could be the opposite, like in general. But I believe that there's moments always around us. We just want to think of moments as just complete positivity and, you know, reading a book, and all those are great. But I think their moments are even the negative times because they can learn through that as well. But I think when we come at it with an attitude of like, pissed off and annoyed, which happens, right? We're not perfect, but I think what I want the message to be is that even in those moments of chasing the kid around, trying to get out of the door, trying to get their shoes on is a teaching moment. It's a moment that you're going to have that could be long lasting for that child, because they're going to remember how you made them feel during that. And it could go either positive or negative. But I think my eyes have been open to always seeing everything as an opportunity and a moment to be available for that. Not just the good. It could be as crazy as chasing to get them into the bath, right? But I just try to step back, be aware of how am I approaching this moment, and hopefully in a good way.
No, that's so important, because then that leads to, being reliable for your kids,
Yeah,
essentially. It all leads into that one, which is so important, because your kids need to be able to rely on you for all the things, right? And yes,
good
they
and
need to,
bad, right? Like,
exact good
exactly.
and bad, and they need to be able to rely on you, that you're going to support them, keep food on the table, roof over their head, clothes on their back, kind of thing. Of course, they rely on you for their basic needs. You rely on yourself for your basic needs. That's a given. But it's so important to not get lost in that so much, to a point to where you're not there for anything else, where you're not there supporting them in any other way, shape, or form, to where you're missing out, on being there for the big moments, or even the little moments,
Yeah.
or where you miss them, or you're too distracted, or you're too focused on something else that you miss. Like, for my little one, every night when she goes to bed, we pray. And it's so fun. She usually prays so that she wakes up dry so she can get a gumball in the morning. That's like a staple for her. Uh, but I can't leave the bedroom without doing that with her. Sometimes I want to go to bed, uh, put her down and get the other one ready for bed and down and whatnot. But like, that's so important to be able to be there for those moments, because not only am I her dad, but I'm also uh, her spiritual leader that she looks to learn about those things. I'm also her, that's our time to connect and hug and kiss and give her that kind of thing, where she gets like dedicated a little bit more attention right there at the end of the day to end her day.
Mhm.
Um, and she values those things. She's 3, but she values those things. She looks forward to them. And she asks for them because she knows that that's like, she loves it. And it's so important to be there for our kids for all those things. And you can't let yourself get caught up in work or life or all the things that you can't be relied on for your kids. Because if they're not relying on you, well, as they get older, guess what? They're going to know that they can't rely on you for deep talks. They know that they can't rely on you to teach them to not do something. They know that they can't rely on you to protect them or to do certain things for them, or they'd be like, well, my dad's not going to care anyway, so I'm just going to go and do drugs, or I'm going to go do this thing, or I'm going to go do this thing. It's not like my dad's going to care anyway, because you set that foundation already. You already laid that foundation as they were growing up, that you weren't reliable, that you weren't there. Like, kids pick up on all these things. They know, like, who did what for them. They know who showed up. They know who supported them. And that's so important, for me as a divorced dad, to understand that, is like, I have always and always will do my absolute best to show up, to be there, to support them, uh, to the point where, like, I'm really thinking, like, man, maybe this year will be the year that I stop coaching, uh, and I just get to be a parent, and I'll help. Maybe I'll give that opportunity to someone else, so I can just be a parent. Part of me loves coaching, but part of me just wants to be a dad and enjoy it at the same time. So it's really hard. It's kind of a internal struggle right now, because I want to be reliable and there for my kid and help her and support her and help her grow and stuff, because it's going to be essentially it's going to be her last year of like regular baseball, before next year she's
Mhm.
going to do softball and transition to softball, and I don't really want to coach softball personally. Um, so it's a
Well, one thing
whole nother thing. So
I recognize that struggle. Um, so we live in Sacramento, California, and we moved up here about 4 years ago, 4, 3 years, 4, yeah, 2019. So almost 5 years. And right away, I got put into work in terms of our congregation and our faith up here. Right, I got into right away, like a month in, I was put into a
Where were you guys?
leadership role. So we
Where
were
were
in
you guys
Southern
before?
California. Yeah, we were in
Okay.
Southern California. I'm originally from Southern California, Westminster, aka, which is right next to Huntington Beach. That's probably a better
Okay.
landmark for other people. My
Yeah.
wife is
I was
originally
born
from
in
here.
I was
Go
born in
ahead.
Torrance, and I was raised in, or I went to high school and stuff in the Bay Area. I went to high school in Oakland. So
Okay, very cool. Yeah, so my wife's originally from here in Sacramento, and we were living in Southern California, and we are recognizing what we really wanted was roots and getting our own home. And we didn't want to do that in the Inland Empire, which was probably the only option we had. So we were like, yeah, let's move up to Sacramento. And plus, the best gifts for our kids sometimes is having grandparents. And so we are closer to my in-laws, and that's been, enjoyable to have that as well. But yeah, when we moved up here, go back to the internal struggle, I got put right into work into our faith, into the leadership, in a leadership capacity, especially working with the youth. And so that took a lot of my time. And then 2020 hit, and the pandemic, and I recognized, okay, here's why we were led here, and here's why I need to help out, because it's an older congregation, and there are certainly things I could bring to the table and help out. But just last summer, I really had a hard conversation with my wife, and we were just trying to evaluate where we were and how we were doing, and how was I doing being available, to us first, her and I, because I think sometimes we get into our marriages or in our relationships, and we are partners. We're partners, and I just think like, okay, your role in the partnership is this, and my like. Sometimes we get into those little, just already putting responsibilities, assumptions that this is what we're good. Like you're good at this. Like we're good. You got my back. Thank you. But then it was just a hard and real conversation. And the thing is like I love my wife. Like, and I recognize like she needed me, and it wasn't. There was a struggle of like, hey, like going to the leader of our congregation, and like, hey, I think we need a pivot. I've always believed that we kind of started off the topic of love God, love my wife, love my children, my family. And then and I've always was counseled, like even love my job almost in a sense before my ministry, in this, because I need to take care of children, family, and wife. Like my calling and serving should not be more priority than those things.
see,
And
I
I think
wrap my
I missed
job
that.
into my ministry. I wrap
Okay.
my job into my ministry a lot of the time because like I do what I absolutely feel like I'm supposed to be doing. Like I
True.
feel like it's part of like my ministry. I've always felt like I'm going to work with youth and families. I work with youth and families. I just got a nice. I actually today, the day of this recording, starts my new pay and my new title. Starts today. So I'm pretty excited about that. But beyond that, I've always put that like into my ministry because like what I believe is also part of my work. It helps. It definitely
Yeah.
helps like guide me. It helps propel me. Uh, and it's my ministry is my schedule during the day. Like what am I doing to honor, to glorify, to do like is who I am. Like how does that go out into the workplace? Like how does that
Mhm.
portray itself? Versus where it's like I don't want to just be a person, especially on Mondays. Like let's say on Mondays, I wake up, get ready, go to work all day, and then I don't want to have to switch that gear. I don't like having to switch that gear to know, oh, now I'm at Awana. Now I'm teaching a lesson about whatever verse or whatever topic we're on tonight. I don't like having to like force my brain to switch those gears.
Fair.
Because it doesn't feel right. I don't like having to feel like I'm switching a whole big part of me to this other thing now. So that's just kind of where I'm at with that. So I usually wrap work into my ministry, uh, because they kind of go hand in hand. Because if I'm not serving at somewhere in my day, then I'm not giving the most I can to be able to support everything else. So
Yeah. But I think we can agree. Like, I love that. And that's something I probably will take away for sure on this whole conversation is and putting that together. Because that's really should be, right? Your life to Christ is always your life. It's your life, whether that's at
mhm.
work or play, whatever it is, right? So you're right. Like, it shouldn't be segmented. We should always be walking with Christ. everywhere we go. And I love that. And I just, maybe that's like a little switch, a little deviation from the way there. But I love that. But I think we both would agree, like where that is priority wise is below God,
Oh,
wife, and
absolutely,
friend. You
absolutely.
know what I mean? And so I think so that internal struggle that you're dealing with the coaching and all that, I feel for you on that. I ultimately asked to be released from my duties, this summer, and kind of get a release, a reset, for myself and for my family, and just kind of come back, because I recognize here's what happened. My child, he was 4 years old. We were saying, let's go to church. Let's get ready for church. And I'm already there because I'm having to get things ready. My wife's been trying to get him and his 1-year-old brother ready to go. And he told his mom, church is for Dada, and not for us. And I was like, oh, that one stung, and that was a reality check, for me, because I was like, no, church is not just for Dada. This is for all of us. And so I took the personal leave of taking a step back, and because he's a COVID child in a sense, right? A lot of going to church for him was through a screen because we couldn't be there physically. And so I just like, there's just an internal wire changing I needed to do. And because he's never had to come to church with dad. And I was like, man, like I never had that, right? Like we talked about how father's journey, like I never had that. So I don't even know what that's like, but I know that I wanted that for my family. And when he said those words, like it was life altering in a sense in my eyes, because I was like, wait, I really forgot that that's more of a priority than anything, is bringing him with me to church, and like having him experience it. And now it took months, but of repetition, to doing it with dad, sitting with dad in the pew and not seeing dad in the front, like having dad right there with him. It's a whole different experience. And it's been great. Like he loves going, it's just it's crazy how that little change, that little availability, bringing what I believe of bringing availability.
I love that. And that's so important. That's so important to, if that's what you're trying to instill in them, then you have to essentially, you have to show them, because it's hard if they're a COVID baby and they're watching it through a screen, or they always just see you up front versus like, well, what does that mean for me? Like, cool, I'm
Yeah,
just here because I have to be, kind of thing, and it creates the wrong sense of kind of what we're wanting to them to get out of it. So it's super important
absolutely.
to be available for them, even in those moments that we don't realize, like, oh, we should be available for them. So that's why I'm kind of torn on that, but well, I'll get through it. Maybe one more year. Maybe one more year. We'll see there.
All good, man.
A lot of it's just like my own pride and stuff, because I wasn't a collegiate athlete, collegiate baseball player, and so it's hard for me to give that up and
Yeah.
not want to live vicariously through these kids, to like teach them the right way to play baseball versus some guy who was a desperation picked by the league to, like, oh, we need a coach. You want to do it? Cool. What do you know? Nothing. Cool. Have fun. Because I want these kids to actually love baseball and actually want to keep playing baseball. And I want them to
Yeah.
be halfway decent at baseball so that they actually like, because part of baseball is like you're going to fail 70% of the time
You
if
got to be
you're
the best
elite.
loser, like you got to be the best
Yeah.
loser in all of us.
And if you're going to be elite at baseball, you have to be able to fail 70% of the time. And that's just, if you don't have fundamentals when you're 5, 6, 7 years old, because you had a coach that just was thrown in there that didn't teach you nothing, those bad habits are going to stay until you're 10, 11 years old. And then by the time it's actually time to get competitive, you're going to want to be competitive, but you suck.
Yeah.
And you fail 90% of the time versus 10% or 70% of the time.
70%. Right.
Like that gap of 20% is massive. Um,
Absolutely.
and you can tell the kids who are, if you look at a little league baseball game, you can tell the kids who are well coached, who have practiced more, who have engaged parents, who have, a little bit of more time and effort put into them, because they're just better. They're just straight up better. Some of it's natural
Mhm.
talent. Some of it's just, they're just better because they have that engagement, they have that time, they have that effort put in by their coaches, by their parents, by their dads, or whoever, to make sure that they can compete with their peers at this level. so that they are only failing 70% of the time versus 90% of the time. 20% is huge. It's massive. It's a
I
huge
agree.
gap.
I'm with you, and I commend you. I wish I could give back to sports. I was a collegiate athlete myself, played football, and I made a pact I made a promise. Like, if I'm going to go coach, I'm only going to do high school. Like, I can't go down to the kids level. Unfortunately, it would be hard for me. I probably will end up doing it with my kids. I don't know, but it's just like there's just so much knowledge that you've experienced, that I've experienced playing at collegiate level, that like I just don't want it to go to waste on a kid who
Right?
can't even tie his shoes. It's like like
Exactly.
but it's just every opportunity I've had to come back to the sport in some capacity with the youth, I love it. And it makes me miss it even more. So it's probably why I stay away.
Yeah.
But I love that you're doing it, and I would agree that like that's what our kids need, is those who actually been in it. I'm with you on that. As much as a Joe Schmo can come off and volunteer, I appreciate it, but my
Hmm.
kid's not going to play. I personally, my kid won't play for you. Like I
Yeah.
will, I told my wife, I said, hey, like I'm not going to push sports on our kids. I promise you that. She wasn't an athlete, but if my kid picks up a football and throws it 50 yards, we're going to have to entertain this. We're going to have to
Right.
figure this out. Okay. But I said, if we're going to go into sports, any sport, soccer, whatever have you, I'm going to look at the coach. I'm going to be very particular,
Hmm.
because you may not think about it. You may just think for them to have fun, but I'm going to be looking at how they're coaching. This is the same way of like how I think about of us as parenting. Like, how are we parenting our child? We're both going to work on this, but it's the same with a coach in my eyes, because now
Yeah.
I recognize the importance of coaching. And, I commend you for doing it. Like, I much respect, because I just, for sure.
No, and it's like for me, it's just, I just want these kids to learn how to play these games the right way so that they can compete and so that they don't suck.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
want them to enjoy it at a point where it's like they're good enough to keep up, not to where they suck. So I coached flag football one year with my church through Upward Sports, and my team. I had a kindergarten grade team. We were dominant. We were so good. But it's like I had another coach talk to me one week that said, "Oh, my kids aren't having fun, and we can barely get the ball through down the field." I'm like, "That's not my fault." Like
Yeah.
they're like, "You're sending your kids too fast," and they're like, "Scoot them back off the line a little bit so like my kids can actually run with the ball." And it's like, "Well, it's not my fault. Your kids grab the ball and they don't know how to run forwards.
Yeah.
Like that's on you." Like my
That
kids
really
reflect that.
is.
Like I've coached them and I've shown them. Like I've taken the time to say, "You run this way when you get the ball. When you take a handoff, you run. You just run down the field." Like you can adapt it to like these kids' grade levels. Like it's not
Absolutely.
that hard, and you can find games and stuff to do with them to teach them the skills you want to learn. But it's like, okay, in that same game, the next half, I scooted them back an extra 3-4 yards off the line, and then I would count to like 3 to 5, like in my head, and then I would tell them, okay, go get them, kind of thing. And my kids looked so bored. They were just like, why? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, it's just so important, who the coach is. Just like
Hmm.
that's the example right there. Like, oh, they're not having fun. Like, okay, hold on. Sports is fun. Okay, it is fun, but it should be done right. Like, it should be done the
Exactly.
right way. And
Exactly.
that's a reflection on that coach. Like, sorry, dude. Like, I don't know what do you tell you
Right.
that.
And it drove me crazy when my daughter was in T-ball, seeing coaches on the other team and their kids would come up to bat, and it's a T. The ball doesn't move. The
Yeah,
ball doesn't move. But if you have kids on your team that are spinning, trying to hit that ball, like you obviously took no time to show them how to hit. You took no time to put lines in the dirt to where they should line their feet up so that they could properly hit the ball, even if it's 5 feet. They're hitting it properly. Like the ball
you're
doesn't move. They shouldn't spin. They should not. That's the last thing they should do. They should not be spinning.
yeah. I'm curious. It may be for another time, but I'm curious of where the correlation.
You
Like,
know, it has to be. And I think there's a direct correlation because seeing those kids that are those coaches' kids on the other side, they're some of they're wild. They're a little bit more untamed. Like you can tell who the coach's kids are.
Yeah.
Uh, you can always tell who the coach's kids are. Any sport. Um, for better or worse, sometimes they're just like really hard workers. Sometimes they're just, next level, like talented. Sometimes they're forced into a spot because they're the coach's kid, and the coach says, "Well, my kid pitches because, well, I'm the coach, and my kid pitches." Uh, it's like, well, they're actually a right fielder, and they should probably be in the outfield. And little Timmy from left field actually can throw the ball across the plate. Maybe you should suck it up and let your kid go and play the outfield because they actually like playing the outfield more than they like pitching. So I think there's a lot of correlations there, uh, good or bad, better or worse. Uh, but I want to ask you here: do you want to hit your hot button, or do you want to hit your mental health thing you put in your questionnaire? Which one do you want to hit?
Let's do hot button.
Hot button.
Can't,
Okay.
can't
So you
remember it,
mentioned
but
for your hot button trying to how important it is to not conform. Yes, the pressure to conform to traditional gender roles and
yeah,
expectations when raising children. I feel
yeah.
like for yourself, you have boys, or you have a boy, right? You have one or
Two
two,
boys. Two
two
boys.
boys. So for you, I think it's super important for you to work on this with them because it's going to be easy for them to fall into that machismo, kind of that attitude,
Yeah.
especially because you have to be extra conscious because you grew up without a father. And
Yep.
you have to make sure that they understand, like, this is what a dad looks like. And you have to, like, create that picture in real time every single day. And you have to teach them, like, okay, go wash a dish, go help your mom with the chores, go do this, or making sure that they can do all those things while also still being, like, tough and strong. One thing my
Yeah.
ex father-in-law said that was really impactful, like for me, like when it came to this, is that this is like one of the few like good things he ever said. Uh, I re- One thing I actually remember him actually telling me that wasn't just trying to blow smoke up my butt, but he's like, I always tell my kids to be tough. I always told the girls to be tough. I always told them to be tough, whether that looks like them wrestling and being tough, or whether that looks like them playing in dirt and playing with the boys to be tough, but just to like be tough, not
Hmm.
necessarily masculine or against like their typical like role, roles that they want to take on as like women and females that come naturally, but also just to like, be tough. So for you, kind of how does this work for you trying to
Yeah.
break, I guess you are the cycle breaker for your kids.
That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah. So there's two parts. Like my, well, no, don't worry about the first part. Second part, the real thing is like it kind of can be a culmination of what we've been talking about with college sports and all that. Um, so from Pee Wee all the way to college, I was told these two words before every game: "Don't suck," and that was all I needed, right? And Pee Wee and all that was funny. It was ha ha ha. But like as you know, as an athlete, we have kind of weird superstitions. Like we kind of want to do the same things over and over.
You're good. You're good.
And so I hear those two words. I mean, it got to the point when I was in college after team meal, I call my mom. We have a talk before I go into the locker room and whatnot. And she was like, "All right, son, love you. Don't suck." I'm like, "Thanks, mom. Cool. Hang up." But I really took that and I grabbed it and I ran with it. And I think that's something with breaking the stereotype and breaking the change. It's just don't suck. Like you see the dishes, go do them. Like, I'm a product of a single mother, and so like I had to see my mom do every freaking thing. I didn't know what gender roles were. It wasn't until I started being around other dads that I didn't like, who I saw how they acted, and I was like, because I just remember I know the stories of my mom's ex-husbands, and I know that I don't like those dudes. That like if I see them on site, like I was just like it's not going to be good. Like I don't like you. How you treated my mom. Like that's all rooted in like how she was treated, and some of it could. And then just remember the days where she would get on me as a child when I'm thinking like it's just chores she's having me do. It was more like, nah, because I realized now looking back, my mom had to do every freaking thing, you know? And so coming back to me being a father and like how I treat my wife, it's like, she doesn't need to serve me. Like, I don't need to be served. I got 2 feet. I got some hands. I can serve my damn self, you know? Like, and so there's these things that we both are recognizing as part of our cultures because I'm Samoan, my wife's Mexican, and there's certainly some aspects of I am man in both cultures, and you are woman. And I love my father-in-law and my mother-in-law, you know, them being Hispanic, but there was times early on in our marriage, especially when we moved up here, we lived with them for a little bit to get our feet grounded and try to establish where we're going to be. And there were moments living there where my father-in-law will tell my wife, "Hey, get is Patrick hungry? Go get him some food." And I'm like, "Nah, I'm good. I got it." Like, and I would just get up and go get my own food, you know. And there were moments where I would go pick up the dishes, and I was recognizing, like, oh man, like, okay, we're at different levels in terms of idea of supporting our wives here. And I imagine a lot of it's the ways of the past and the culture. And again, like just again breaking those chains. But I didn't even see these chains to begin with. Like I didn't know what those were. I just knew that I didn't like seeing my. Eventually, didn't like seeing my mom or recognize the struggle she was doing as a mother and a father and provider and everything for me. Like I was like, I'm gonna do what I can. And so it's not. It's really natural for me to be like my wife. Like, hey, can you just go get this? Cool. I have no questions. But man, just recently did I hear feedback from another couple friend of ours, and the wife was talking to my wife, and she was saying like, yeah, there's only one time that like my husband brought up something that he recognized, and it was that like he thought you were very demanding, you know, and it was because she was like, hey, can you get this from me? Can you get that? And I was like, you're demanding? Like, no, like what the heck? Like I can do these things, you know. And so it's just very interesting. It's just very interesting as I've gotten more into this digital world on social media, and I'm hearing perspectives from the man and from the women and what they hate and what they're annoyed by, and some of those things specifically on this, just serving each other and serving your wife and serving in the home seems to be a very unconventional thing, and it's eye opening because I didn't know that, right? I didn't grow up with that whole idea and understanding. I just it's just weird. So
Yep.
it is a hot button, and it shouldn't. But that's the thing, like you said, it shouldn't be a hot button. Like
Mm-mm.
it shouldn't be a hot topic. Like it's just interesting how that's come about, and I'm looking forward to just going against that grain every day.
100%. And I mean, it shouldn't. It shouldn't be a hot button to serve our wives, to serve our partners, to do things for them. It's definitely it's weird because it's more common than you think it would, but then you also see the opposite where like I see women post like, "Oh, my husband was trying to do this for me," and rah rah feminism, rah rah girl power, rah rah
Yeah,
all these things like I don't need him kind of thing, like divorce or it's an ick or it's this thing kind of thing. And so it ends up turning into like, well, I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't kind of thing.
yeah,
Uh, so it's a really weird issue. It's a really weird place. It's one of the and I don't I well I don't know. It's not one of the brightest spots of feminism. Let's just say that
sure.
to
Yeah,
where it creates that where it's like, well, you want me to serve you, but you don't want me to serve you. You want me to do this for you, but you don't want me to do this for you. You want me to do this, but you don't want me to do that. You want me to do this, but you don't want me to do that. Like where are you at? Kind of thing. Like tell me, let me on here. Tell me exactly what you
yeah,
need. Tell me exactly what you're thinking. Tell me exactly how I can help you and support you. Uh, oh wait, but if I do that, that's bad. But if I don't do that, that's also bad. And it's very confusing for a lot of men out there, especially trying to establish that and to work through that. Ultimately, I feel like in time, like it reverts a little bit back to that, like those walls kind of break down in time and stuff with the right person, with the person that you're with. Like those walls break down where you allow them to serve you, you're allowed to serve them in all these different ways, shapes, and forms that are meaningful to them. You learn each other how to serve them, how to love
yes,
them, how to work with them. You learn all these things. It's going to be rough at first, but both people have to be willing to break down those walls and to go against those like conventions that you're being taught, whether it's through feminism or whether just growing up in your culture and as a man. Uh, it's a very sharp double-edged sword. That's
Very
one
true.
that's very hard to navigate for a lot of people. But ultimately, do what feels right to you. Ultimately, uh, do what the right thing is. If the right thing is to serve and be
It should never be
selfless,
wrong to do the right thing, right? Like that's the
no.
crazy part. Is unfortunately, like it's not like I'm for this feminism movement. Like I'm all for it, empower women. I get it. Like I don't want my wife to be submissive, like absolutely submissive to me. Like I want her to be her. She was her before we got together. Like she
Hmm.
was who she lived, who God created her like to be, right? Before she even met me. All because she's married now, like she has to just drop that. That doesn't make sense to me,
Mm-mm.
So, but like going back to don't suck, like just those two words, like how I applied that to sports was like, hey, like don't suck at practice, be focused, be good, don't suck being a teammate, right? Like be a good teammate, don't suck being a player and not being coachable. Like it wasn't just don't suck on the field. It's just I involved it holistically, everything about sports, and I just brought that back into fatherhood. It's like, hold on, like this freaking sucks. Let's figure this out, And I think you're hitting on the point of like the double-edged sword. It is, but just like as we can agree on with everything on it, it's work. Like we got to really just
Hmm.
work this out. Like
Yeah, you gotta put the
I
work in.
love you too much. Like I love you too much to just not work this out. Like let's work through this. And I think that's why I'm grateful for sports because we learned that. And that's ultimately what I would want for my children, especially if I were to get in coaching, is like understand like everything you're going to learn here is going to be applied in your life,
Hmm.
regardless if you take this to professionals or not. But like you're going to use this for life, and that's how I've been able to bring that into my fatherhood journey. Is just like don't suck, like figure it out, be available in every moment, be intentional, right? Whether it's just what I was on the field, bring it off the field too. Now, like that's just where it's at.
All right, you ready to jump into the YDP3?
All right, let's do it.
Jump into the YDP3. First one of the YDP3 here. 3 questions I ask every guest that comes on the show, or at least I try to end us. First one here is, where are you rooted? Kind of touched on this a little bit, but
Yeah.
where are you rooted? Like, what makes up the innermost workings of Patrick?
Yeah, man. So first off, I'm Samoan, and growing up, there's in our culture, there's a certain way of life, and it's called Samoa. And the Samoa way is a way of life, and ultimately, it stems from being joy. It's your faith, your family, um, love, and humility. Right? Those are the 4 really core things of our way of life of the Samoan people. And if you were to we kind of took the nickname of like we're the most happiest people on in the Pacific, and I believe it's because of those 4 things. As I've tried to apply those 4 things in my life, yeah, life is a little bit better. you know, just having my faith, my family, my love for all that, and humility has been and respect. Forgive me, that's the 5th core. Is respect for one another. That's a big deal. So that's where I'm rooted at. Is in
I
the
love that.
Samoa way.
I love that. That's beautiful. All right, next one here is, what grounds you? So when you're feeling all stressy and depressy, what kind of brings you back? What kind of helps you come back down into reality, brings you back down from that?
That this is the life that I longed for, right? Like I grew up without a father. My mom eventually was remarried, and I have my stepdad who let me give him his flowers. Like he came in when I was 10 years old, 11 years old, and I love him. He's my dad. If anyone's going to ask who's my dad, it's going to be him. But, in all reality, like there was still some of that um, emptiness without my actual biological father in my life, right? So I'm what brings me back is just like, this is the life I looked for. This is the life I longed for, to being a dad. And, yeah, it sucks at times, but like, no, like this is what I wanted. There were times in my life, kind of not, we won't dive into it, but like I was deep into alcoholism. Like I was, I lived a little bit of a sheltered life and got in college and went a little crazy, from where I was into bartending and all that. It got a little nuts for me. And I recognized, wait, this is when I was trying to come back to God and come back to Christ and my life and understanding that the value of that in my life. I realized like what I was looking for was this. I wanted to be a dad. wanting to be a partner, a husband. And sometimes when the days suck, it's like, just take a step back. This is what you asked for, like now don't suck. Go back into it.
I love that. All right, last one here. I'm gonna set the scene for you. Let's say we're at the park. We're at the park.
Okay.
You're playing with your kids. I'm playing with my kids. But I see you. So I just look up. I see you're happy. You're smiling. You're joyful. You're cheery. You're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I'm the opposite. I'm stressy, depressy, deep, dark bags under my eyes. I look tired, run down, beaten up, all the things. We don't know each other. We don't know each other. That's important here. I look up, you look up, we make eye contact across the park. Classic Hallmark movie, love story moment. We look up, and then I approach you. I walk over to you, and I'm like, look, man, I don't know you. You don't know me. You look happy. You look joyful. I'm not. I'm the opposite. And you can tell, like, I reek of the low vibes. Like, I reek of these low vibes. I look tired, sad, down, depressed. I look dark. And I'm like, what's your secret sauce, man? What do you got going on that I don't got going on? In that moment, you get 1.5 pieces of advice to leave with me.
Honestly, what I would be doing in that scenario, first, before any advice is given, I'm always trying to seek to understand before being understood. I really take that to heart. So if I see you coming at me with those vibes, how are you doing? What's up? Sometimes as men, we just need a platform to just talk. And sometimes that's what I can give without even giving much, It's just, how are you? Just simply asking that question and showing that my walls are down, my guy. Holler at me. Let's talk. I would do that. I would just say, I would intently ask, how are you doing? Before I go about giving any advice that would be relevant or not. Because I don't know what you want to know, because I don't know what you don't know, but I appreciate. So I guess let's go into this Hallmark theme. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, say, oh, hey, nice to meet you, man. Like, how you doing? Cool. Awesome. Or not awesome. That sucks. Like, what is it you're struggling with, dude? Like, I get it because I've been there. I've always felt this way. So take away the scene, like feel, felt, found in the way of sales. I don't know if you had heard of this theme, right? Like I've applied that wholeheartedly in my life and approach to anyone who's going to approach me in this manner of anything in life. Is like, hold on, let me see how you feel. Oh, okay, yeah, I felt that way, and here's what I found. Because what's the point of me throwing out all this wisdom if that's not what you're looking for? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's not what you were asking, So I would wholeheartedly first ask, how are you doing? What's going on? Let me be where you're at first before I just talk down at you. Let me see you eye to eye. Let me know what's going on. That's what I would do.
I love that. I love that. That's beautiful. Well, that wraps us up, Patrick. Tell us
Man.
one more time the IG handle where people can connect with you, follow you along, get more of you.
Yeah, man. You see me on Instagram at Dadalorian Life. We'll be launching our website and full things go in a couple days here. A couple of days. Well, I'll have a blog and everything up there. But Dadalorian Life is where you'll find me. Love, availability, reliability. This is the way.
Love that. This is the way. On that note, Patrick, thank you so much for your time today. It's much appreciated.
You're awesome, brother. I appreciate you, man. We'll see you on